Hey there, comic book friends. I'm Travis, and that over there is Mike, Sergeant America. How's it going, Mike?
Oh, excellent, excellent. Glad to be on.
We are gonna talk some comics. We went from a large cast last week to a small cast this week. No big deal. Interesting week for comics for me. I actually have no Marvel comics. I have one DC comic, the weekly comic, and other than that, the rest of my comics are what we call independent comics. So, kind of a strange week. But we'll talk about whatever because I know you got. Well, I don't know if you have any DC, but I know you got some Marvel and whatever. So
Yeah.
we'll talk books. What do you want to talk first?
Go ahead and talk DC. We'll start off with your
Okay.
one. So,
So obviously the only book, if I got a DC book, of course it's the weekly Batman Eternal. I really like this cover. That's a
yeah.
cool cover with the fear serum there. You can see this. Well, I don't know if on the camera you can because of the glare, but
Oh
it's
no,
got
it's good.
these the skulls floating around in there and whatnot is pretty awesome. Um, this is actually a decent issue. I actually really enjoyed this issue. Um, it has a big reveal of possibly who it is that's behind this whole thing. I'm kind of kicking myself. I'm not going to spoil it here, but I'm kind of kicking myself because I've been sitting around thinking I know it's got to be a villain that already exists. They're not going to make up a new villain for this, and who would do this kind of thing? And now that it's been revealed, I feel kind of stupid that I didn't think of it because he's kind of done this thing before. So they reveal who potentially is the bad guy in this. They also give us some more reveals about some people we thought might be good guys who now seemingly aren't good guys. Um, they clean up some stuff in this one as far as tying up some loose ends and I guess creating some new ones. But I enjoyed it. The art was great in it. Who did the art? Jason Fabok did the art in it. I really like his Batman. Speaking of Jason Fabok, he has been announced that he's going to be the new artist on Justice League, which is going to make that comic better than what it is. But unfortunately, it's still got the writer on it that I'm bored to death with. So I will not be getting it. I've dropped that book, and so I'm swearing by it. But anyway, this book, this was scripted by Tinian the Fourth, and in the past, I usually do a pretty good job of bad mouthing him, but I don't know. I've actually kind of liked. They haven't been bad. His Batman Eternal stuff hasn't been bad. Unfortunately, last issue, of course, the very end, they teased spoiler, and this issue, she's not in it at all again. So I don't know what's up with that as far as that goes. But um, yeah, it was a good. It was a good issue. It was a good issue. That's my DC. What's
All
going on in
right.
DC news? I don't know of any DC news type stuff that's going on.
They keep releasing more and more information about Arrow every week about who's
Oh
coming
yeah,
on.
yeah, Cupid. They're bringing
Yep.
Cupid to the show. That's an
Yep.
interesting choice. And I think the actress who's playing it was in Supernatural. I think she played the first. If you're familiar with the show, I think she played the first Meg
All right. Well,
before she gets killed and then ends up with a new body and she's brunette. So when she was a
all
blonde.
right.
Yeah, not that you know, right?
So yeah.
But Cupid's a really interesting character for him to take on because I don't know. Are you familiar with the character?
No. No.
Um, Created, I think, largely by the artist Mike Norton. She's kind of a well, she's not kind of. She really is a psycho. She becomes obsessed with Green Arrow, like you know, in love with him,
Yeah. Yeah.
stalker type love,
Yeah.
and so that'll be an interesting dynamic to put in the show. I mean, I see how it works in the show. Um, it's certainly not going to give women a good name, I don't think, but um, that'll be that's an interesting choice
Yeah.
of his pantheon of characters to bring her in is interesting.
All right.
Anything else in the Arrow besides that?
I think I saw that they're bringing in Felicity's boyfriend and things like that. So
She
it
has a
wasn't
boyfriend.
anything that. Yeah, it wasn't an ex-boyfriend. It wasn't a big shocker or anything. It
Oh.
was just they just keep releasing this because it's every
Well, to keep us
episode.
excited, right?
Yeah. So
To keep us
uh,
excited, and so we're not talking about Shield.
yeah. So I don't know anybody that's talking about Shield. So I guess I did last week. That was it. That was the big reveal in Shield. So.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting that like I said, that hearing the Cupid's gonna be that could be a fun character.
Yeah. I did see Sarantino showed on his Twitter feed the lithographic cover of
The Future's End.
Future's End Green, with Green Arrow. That it's him at his own tombstone, and then it disappears. So
Right.
yeah, it looked good. Just waiting for his X-Man to come out, I guess.
Yeah. Jeez.
I'll let you know how it is.
Still bummed out that he jumped ship.
Yeah.
And then he jumped ship for the X-Men. I was kind of hoping that he'd end up somewhere on something that was kind of one of the fringe books that I pick up, but I'm afraid to pick up Avengers and X-Men books.
All right.
There's too much going on in those books for me to.
And I think that it was just the annual that he's doing. I'm not sure that he's doing the whole, run on a series. I think he's, all I've seen so far is just a mention on the annual, so.
Okay. Well, he's kind of mentioned like he's got some regular gig going on, so I don't know.
Right. And maybe it is. It was just, if it wasn't for his name, I wouldn't even pick it up, but because it was like some character I don't know and time jumping, and I'm like, all the things about X-Men I didn't want, and
Yeah.
But Sarantino, so I'm going to pick it up. So.
Yeah. Are you picking up that Future's End Green Arrow? Are you gonna get that?
Oh well, yes, I will pick up that one. Like I said, I'm spoiled because it's on the shelf. So if it's on the shelf, I'll flip through it and grab it. So
yeah. Get the fancy cover version or the 2D version.
Yeah. Whatever looks great. Yeah, I'm a sucker for it.
Good thing I don't have a shop, I guess. So there you go. So Marvel. Seems like we're kind of drifting into Marvel.
The Punisher versus Thunderbolts. I've been talking about it. It's getting better each time. It was, I think, another artist change, George Fornes. And, I looked at it. It was, a little cartoony and whatnot. And I was, at first, I guess, maybe a little miffed until I got to the second page. And it's almost this comic book style format where it says, start here, and then it goes up to this panel and they fight these people, and you go up to this panel and they fight them, and then you get to these big guys and you go all the way over, and you just keep working your way back until you get to the end. And I thought that was a really smart way of doing it.
Yeah.
It reminded me of those old 90s video games that you just worked your way through the levels, bosses and all that. It's Punisher versus Elektra, and it's going back into their memory of when they first met, and she killed some guy and cut out his heart and gave it to the Punisher. And he's like, she gave me her heart. Well, it was technically this mob villain, but, then he gets it bronzed and gives it back to her when they join the Thunderbolts together.
Wow.
And then he talks with her and says, I know that you hesitated when you said you killed your brother, and so I know you didn't do it, so I killed him. And she goes, how do you think that that's not how I asked you to do something? And he's like, I don't understand. He goes, well, I'm not just going to ask you. He goes, so you manipulated me? He goes, that's how we are in our relationship. So this is a love story between the two of them. A messed up, wonderful love story, except for, she says to him, well, that's not the first time we've met. It was the first time you saw me. The first time I saw you, and then they kick back to, it's a grassy park area, and there's two mob gangs, and they're going to cross each other, and she's there, and his family gets shot, and she's in the background, that she was, tied into one of the mob groups. So, an interesting take on it, but basically it's then Hawkeye can't believe that they are A, in love, and B, have been killing everybody this whole time. So Tony Stark says, well, yeah, I'm kind of glad that you're angry, Hawkeye. Let's go ahead and go stop them now. And it ends with the Punisher telling General Ross, it's your turn. I'm going after you. So, I mean, a wonderful love story, Thunderbolts. I don't know how anybody's not picking it up. Beautiful.
Yeah, I can't compete with that kind of romance. Bronzing
Yeah,
somebody's heart and whatnot. Wow, that's.
yeah. Like I said, one of my fun books. One of my fun books. Um, the Inhumans was a just good read. I picked it up because it had Thor visiting the new Attila. The Black Bolt has ignited a bomb on their city on the moon, and it blows all the way over to the Hudson River, I guess. And
Mhm.
then that releases the gas, and now everybody who's in humans on Earth is showing their powers. And it's basically, it follows almost the storyline of Thor, where he brings his city to Oklahoma, and they're basically bringing the Inhuman city to New York. And how do they interact with normal people? And there's just, I guess, more and more of these new humans, is what they're calling them, and you humans. And it's just the interaction between and I did used to not like the Inhumans. It was almost like space fair, where it's all these people are everybody is so weird looking, nobody blends in, and I didn't know how to feel about that. I think after Guardians of the Galaxy and just liking the variety, I think that's what I'm getting out of it now. It's fun, it's interesting, but like I said, it really felt like a retelling of Thor's storyline coming into Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
Um, the Avengers undercover. The Avengers go to save the kids. They know that they're stuck with all these villains. The kids are fighting the villains. The Avengers show up, and the villains go, "Oh, well, the Avengers are nothing but predictable." And they all of a sudden they're into like this giant hole. I don't know, miles and miles below the Earth. So they just cap it with this, almost cave it in, and all the bad guys teleport away, and that is the story. It was like a big trap. It was like we only used the kids to bring the good guys here, and now we get to run the surface because they're gone. I don't understand how they think that is, how that keeps them there, but otherwise, fun read. Hopeless is hopefully got somewhere he's going with this. And then New Ultimates. I was telling everybody I liked it because it was just nice, simple storyline, decent art, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Milo Genesis is the artist, like Giannis Milogenesis, and I really felt like the author was lazy. It just felt like, and maybe it's the coloring. I don't know for sure, but it just really felt like the artist rushed it. Like he put just an outline and then said just do enough to make it look like the heads are rounded, but you don't have to fill in any details. So I have never ever felt like punching a comic in the face before, but the all new Ultimates is
Oh!
truly the worst one. I am off it. It is done. That
Wow!
one pissed me off more. At $3.99, I was like, I'm not going to. Oh, I didn't want to buy it at $3.99. And I kind of liked the story, and it was going all right, and the art was okay. This one, they just walked around in a sewer looking for crossbones, and then they fight some bad guys, and then they realize later they were almost like the mutants that lived in the sewers in the normal universe.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Morlocks?
yeah, Morlocks. Yeah, thank you. And then they realized, oh, well, just because they look like villains, maybe we shouldn't have, beat them up, and they may have even killed them. I couldn't really tell it was in that, the storyline was also bad because there was one thing where they referenced, like, I got hit with my own dagger. It says I got hit with my own dagger, and I flipped pages back and forth. Evidently, it happened in between panels,
Oh.
and it was just, oh, it made me so upset. I mean, I never, like you talked about, you don't get rid of your bad comics.
Right.
I don't generally, I don't know that I've ever destroyed a comic before. That may be my first. That one truly pissed me off at $4 to be that crappy.
Wow.
And and that is it. I am never. Do not pick up the all new Ultimates. I skipped one episode, the beach scene episode. I was done, and I went back because I can flip through and look, and I'm like, all right, this one's okay. This one I thought it took me 2 days to read. I mean, I'm almost getting angry again just thinking of this stupid comic. So
Wow.
that was my very last Marvel. That was it. That was my Marvels for this week.
Oh, jeez.
I was actually so mad about Inhumans. That's why I went back, or I was so mad about the Ultimates. That's why I went back and bought an Inhumans, and that it made me feel better. It was a good Marvel comic, but all new Ultimates once again, punch it in the face.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ringing endorsement there, man.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh,
So
geez.
that's it. What about your independents? How are they? No cape.
I'm loving my no capes, as it were. Actually, that's not true. I can't say that because some of them have capes in it.
Yeah.
Two of them have capes in it, as a matter of fact. Two of the independent books I read, at least two, actually have superheroes in it. So they're just not put out by the big two.
All right.
And I'm okay with that. So let's talk Cowl.
Cowl, yes.
Because I know you picked that up.
Yeah.
I'm still really digging the book. I'm enjoying it. I like the intrigue of the whole. Now our superhero union has gone on strike. You know, they're out picketing. I find that all interesting. Not that I'm pro or con the union, but I just like that concept interests me. So I like that aspect of it. You know, you've obviously got some maybe questionably moral people who are in Cowl, as far as their behaviors go, and you know, they're kind of, to some degree, they're kind of cleaning up their own messes and kind of trying to hide them. In some cases, they're just trying to hide them. Supposedly, they're just trying to hide them for now until they get their negotiations done, they get their contract, and then they'll expose the bad people they have in their own group. And of course, then we have these two that are kind of running renegade. You know, they're out beating up the criminals and stuff. You know, they're not supposed to, because of course that's against against their union.
Yeah.
But of course they want to kick the ass of the people who beat up their friend. Hospital their friend and stuff. So they're doing it anyway. And actually, it looked like they're doing a pretty effective job of.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're really leaving a message on that one. So.
Right. They trash this casino. I love how they deal with this guy with this super shield. It's like he's like all bragging about it. It's like, well, the one guy, his power is to absorb energy fields, so he just takes it away, and then he gets drilled with all his dice. As the lady's shooting him with the dice. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The telekinetic. But yeah, I love the artwork in it. I love the style of it.
And even though you kind of know a idea of the storyline, I like that there's still enough taste in where the weapons are, how the negotiation goes, the taste of conflict even at the end. Mm-hmm. I think it doesn't seem too cliche. That was my worry, is it was going to be, they're going to be fighting over their they're going to have to picket, they're going to have to do all this stuff, and all the criminals are going to go. So I can already see where the storyline's going. I do a little bit, but I think they give it just enough flair to make me keep caring about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the writer definitely has a style to not make it drag. So.
Right. I mean, it has. I mean, you could say it does have some of the stereotypical type stuff in it for what it is. The whole union thing and whatnot. And, but there's just something appealing about it that it doesn't. It isn't hard to swallow. I mean, I guess. I'm like I said. The characters are interesting enough. I'm really curious to see where everybody kind of really lands at. At what point? I mean, some people seem more corrupt than other people do, as far as. Yeah. I'm going to let the little white lies slide by, but when it starts getting dicey, how long are some of these people going to continue to toe the line, kind of a thing? So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting. It has to do with superheroes, but there's enough other basic human conflict in it that I think makes it makes it intriguing. I think so.
And I do like how they explain a little bit also on their powers towards the end, like the last page, that dossier that usually
Oh,
you
right.
get.
They have a thing of back matter, which every
Yeah.
issue talks about another character that was in it and whatnot. So
So it
yeah,
avoids the whole worry about the origin issue, and this one just kind of keeps feeding just enough information to keep the storyline rolling at a great pace.
hmm hmm yeah. So supposedly next issue finishes the first arc. I don't. I mean, I don't know if they've said there's an end to this. I don't know what it, because this is all based off of a movie script that they wrote.
All right.
And I don't know when that ends. I mean, I'm curious. I need to do some more research to find out at what point in the comic does it reach the end of whatever they had going on. I mean, not that that matters that much to me. I'm just curious as if the creators have a sense of what they might want to do past the movie. I haven't seen the movie, so I have no idea. I'm assuming the movie covers this whole union thing to an end, somewhere at the end of that. And so I'm curious to find out if this will have a lifespan past that. Doesn't matter to me. Like I said, I'm enjoying the book or whatnot,
Yeah.
but I'm curious if the creators have a sense of, is there an end? I mean, do they, and is the end, 12 issues out? Is that how long they're planning on running it out to? And
Yeah.
if it's still going well, they're gonna make up something after that, or I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. Not that it matters.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm enjoying the book now, and I'm gonna keep reading it while I'm enjoying it. But
And I think there is a worry with that because I think we saw it work for Saga. They had the ability to keep the story going.
right,
When they could have wrapped it up, they kind of knew if the sales weren't there, you end the characters like this.
right,
But they had more story. I think the worry is that Lost idea where you had two great seasons and they just kept adding fillers until they finally decided they had to end it.
right. Yeah,
So, but yeah, I think it's an amazing story. Yeah, and the artwork is definitely, it's got such a great feel and such a great look. It gets you into that period and era, and it just continues just to be strong.
yeah, yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
What else did you get for indie books?
Let's see. Oh, another one you probably got, Bodies. Did
Oh
you?
yeah. Where's it at? There it is. What you think?
It was good. Once again, I definitely had to reread it. It's very intelligent in that point that it's not oversimplified, and it's not just a blank statement of weird questions. I can see that this is starting to tie one into another. Because it was like there are certain things repeated in here, like Padraig, like the guy who was eating the corpse.
Right.
He repeated the Padraig after
In the 1940s.
Yeah, that one. So I started
The Irish guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of this is tying in together. They're explaining a little bit more about this, let's see, the Moon 83, 83-7.
The Set in the Future one. Yeah.
Yeah, where they're even talking about like everybody doesn't have memories but me, and they even clue in a little bit that last page. It's great. I'm glad that they're even starting to tie this together so that it's not seeming like four crazy loose stories that you're not going to get till the very last page or last issue.
Right.
Because we're 2 out of 8. I feel that it's well paced and we're getting more information. I don't think I could solve it till probably the very last one is the way I'm feeling.
Right.
But I mean, they definitely go deep into each character, and they pretty much have it evened out very well. I mean, each person seems to get just what they need for to describe each era. So.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the cool things is, it's not just simply the crime of this body that's in basically the same condition in each of these different timelines, left in the same street, in the same place, in each one. The detectives of each of these eras have their own personalities, their own quirks. That all gets worked into the story, whether it's relevant or not. Whether it's relevant that the 1890s guy obviously likes men, but isn't going to admit that he likes men. I mean, so he's hiring he's hiring this kind of rough-handed, husky-voiced prostitute to pleasure him at this club that he's kind of forced to go to. It's ladies' night that he's forced to go to, and obviously that's not his taste in sexual partners, so he somehow works his way around that. But at the same time, she's kind of an informant of sorts, which is interesting. But we didn't need that whole part, but it's kind of cool that makes him different. That makes him a different character than our Muslim woman detective, who, even when she's not at work, she's watching historical detective work. I mean, which is great, because I mean that's a real thing. That the bog man that they found this bog man, they found him out in the bogs of Ireland or Scotland, I think. Yeah. Was that what it was? I can't remember exactly what it was, and they decided that he was dead, and they used modern forensics to figure out exactly how he was killed and whatnot. Yeah. That plays into the story, because at the very end of this, they're in 2014, and she's been watching this kind of History Channel on this murder, and the body of this supposed ritual killing back with the bog man. And there's my phone ringing. Hopefully the kids get it, but they won't.
Because it's not their cell phone.
Right. But it's the body's in the exact same position and condition that their bodies are. They're laying all these streets. That just opens up a whole other level of mystery to me. It's like, what? I mean, I don't know. I thought that part was cool. That part was like, that's nuts. But like I said, each character has more to them than just simply there to solve the crime. In that way, in the future version, we obviously get more idea of obviously being outside, exposed to the radiation or whatever, makes you just as loopy as hell. Because the longer they're indoors, the more our detective starts to make more sense. I mean, when she's outside and she first comes in, she's just kind of bonkers. And the longer she's indoors, like out of the radiation, the saner she seems to get. So. Yeah.
I also thought it was very interesting, the 1940s, where they have the detective, like he's dreaming, and then he has to cover up, where he's talking about his past and all that. And
right.
I definitely thought that was a good feed into figuring out who this guy is. Mm-hmm. I mean, each one, the way they explain people is just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that makes it really interesting as we slowly get pieces about the actual murder itself, because we don't. What I think is curious is, he's the 1940s guy's having that dream. There's the little doll floating down, and it has the symbol, this kind of symbol that's shown up everywhere as kind of this one of the clues as to what maybe is going on, the ritual part of this whole thing. And then of course an actual paratrooper has landed on the actual body too. That's kind of bizarre. It's really interesting. I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad I picked it up. It's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. And it is good that paratrooper helps cover up his dead body. It was like, well, obviously it was him who killed the person. Right.
Well, it was just convenient that when the air raid happened, that it blew up the building that the body was in. That whole thing ended up working out pretty well, didn't it? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. With the future one, I do think it's always interesting that they're always asking, who are you and what do you remember? Because they even kind of talk about an event, the Pulse. Do you remember the Pulse?
Yeah.
So there's just tons of this that keeps, it's the boldness in colors, the way they switch art styles, the way that, it's all separate writers, and then they...
No, it's one writer.
It's one writer. Separate artist. All right.
Cy Spencer wrote the whole thing. It's each artist takes on their own timeline.
Because it's, as he describes each one, I mean, it obviously he just feeds in pieces from, there's a big story, and he could tell each small story, the layers. I've just never seen anything like this, and I think that's what catches me as probably the most amazing part of it is telling a story in a story in a story. So
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. The fact that, like I said, the fact that the detectives are intriguing themselves as people as much as this greater mystery of the bodies in these
yes,
places, which really is the big part of the book, right? Is these how is that possible? How does that work? That in each one of these, you know, times in history and in the future, there's a body that's mutilated in the same fashion, in the same way, in the same place throughout. That in itself should be intriguing enough. But then, like I said, each of these characters, where they're from, what they're about, and what they mean, are all really
yeah.
interesting too. So, yeah,
I
good.
I do think the future one is going to be interesting just because she can't remember, and then it's so even every time they introduce somebody new, they don't explain because well, she doesn't remember how she met them. She doesn't
Right.
remember when they leave. I
Yeah.
think normally that might upset me, but it's interesting in this storyline.
Well, it's in small doses, I think, and the entire book isn't dependent on that. I mean, if it was
Yeah,
an entire book of that, I could definitely see us being frustrated because then it's all pendant on you basically being totally blind the entire time, and that I like being surprised and whatnot, but totally blind all the time would be pretty frustrating,
yeah,
as far as that goes. But because it's just a piece of of a larger puzzle, it works.
right.
Yeah. Picked up Saga, of course. It's Saga week, so
All
picked
right.
up Saga. Um, I'm still really enjoying the book. It has the shocking first page really isn't that shocking. It's kind of funny. Um, uh, the babysitter is telling a creation myth to Hazel, the
All right.
child in it, and basically the story is that there's this heavenly being and it passes gas and that's the universe. So the first picture is a heavenly being passing gas and the universe is
All right.
being shot out. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Tamer Saga. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's the our main characters, the Marco and Alana, obviously having marital problems. It comes to a header in this issue. They throw crap at each other and look to be potentially going their separate ways. Um, we get to meet the king of the robot people, the
All right.
television heads, and the king has a widescreen, high definition television. That's his head,
And so
as opposed to everybody else's. If you're familiar with the book at all,
yeah,
Prince 4 has just kind of a standard looking like almost like a old computer screen.
yeah,
Um,
the old Apple kind of look. Yeah.
right, right. But Dad's head is a giant widescreen, and
All
the first shot you see of Dad, it's a double page spread.
right. Oh
He's
yeah.
sad. He's sad, so it's waterfall rolling over a cliff because
Yeah.
he's sad. But yeah, there he is, and his scepter's a giant ass remote control.
Okay.
So
All right.
so yeah, that's pretty funny. A pretty funny gag. I mean,
I would love for you to explain Saga to somebody who only buys Batman, Captain America, Superman, and Spider-Man.
it'd be fun.
They're pulling the four off, and you tell them Saga is the best book ever. Let me explain this to you.
Yeah, it might be an adventure. There's some small great little lines in this. I mean, nothing that's like earth shattering. I think this is still just a really enjoyable book.
Yeah.
Um, it the feeling of it has changed in the sense I don't know. I don't know if it's the fact those of us who are still reading it and like it are maybe coming off of our high to some degree of that first year. Um, the book is settling in. We can kind of see maybe where it's going.
All right.
Um, so that might be some of the reasons that I'm not like, oh my God, Saga. I still think it's a really well written book. There's a great couple lines in this one where everybody's away from the house. Well, I guess it takes Marco. Marco is the father, a magic using person who has a translation spell working all the time, so everybody can understand everybody else that's in the house.
Yeah.
He's gone, and Alana's gone, so there's no translation. So Grandma is yelling and screaming at the babysitter and Hazel, in a language we can't read. You can't read it. It's all alien garbly-gook.
Right.
She's got one of her books in her hand. She's yelling at them like they're bothering her from getting to read her book. They can't understand her at all. They're like, look, I can't understand it. And Hazel, the little girl who's, I don't know, 4 or 5, whatever. No.
Oh, Hazel. Yeah,
Hazel's the little girl. Isabel,
right,
I think Isabel is the name of the babysitter.
All right,
Somehow she understands what Grandma's saying. She's just good with words. And she says, she goes, oh, well, Grandma's, worried about Mom and Dad and their relationship. Basically, that's what she says. And Hazel's thinking, you get the narrative of her going, yeah, I'm not like superpowers or anything. I'm good with words, like kids are. Then towards the end of it, I can't remember exactly the situation that goes on. Mom and Dad are outside fighting. It's obviously a fight. They're throwing crap at each other. Marco's walking away, and the babysitter and Marco's mother are inside the ship looking out at what's going on. And Hazel's narrative is, I'm not sure what all is going on. And she goes, words are harder than they used to be. Whereas at the beginning, she's saying, words are great. I mean, I don't have any problem with them. And now there's this conflict with her parents that, of course, at her age, she probably doesn't understand. Yeah. Suddenly, she's not so good with words. I just really like that. I thought that was a really good writing touch of here she is being happy, open, and just taking in language, and everything's great and whatnot. And then we get this scene of potentially her family life going to hell in a handbasket, and now suddenly that's not there. And they do it simply within 2 sentences, can change that entire mode. And I got that's good writing for me anyway.
Yeah.
So enjoying that. What else did you read?
Outcast. It was a continuation.
Issue 3, right?
Yep, this is issue 3. It does continue to be interesting. At the beginning, I got a little worried that I had to reread 1 and 2 because they start you off with this other couple and this guy and there's a third guy who's sitting on the chair, and the husband appears to leave. And at that point, the third guy or the other guy decides he's going to kiss this person's wife, and he bites her tongue off. And the husband comes back, and there's just blood everywhere, and he's like, "Hello, Luke. I'm sorry." I presume it has something to do with possession again. The priest is having issues with his faith, and the main character, Kyle, goes over to the neighbor's house, and it shows that Kyle, has a normal life. He's kind of reaching back out, kind of reestablishing himself. Kyle returns to his house, and there's one door with this intricate key in it, and he gets ready to turn the key and open the door, and he goes, "No, not today." So, I mean, it keeps giving you all these interesting questions. There's definitely fear points in here where a little girl almost walks out in the street and gets blasted by a car, but is saved by who we either presume is the devil, a bad guy, or another demon. And then they bring back the beginning of the story where Detective Luke comes to Kyle and asks for his help. So it continues to be a good story. It's definitely keeps pushing it just far enough, and it seems to be raising now at least a lot more questions than it's answering right now. The characters are getting stronger because you're getting more knowledge about them. But like I said, opening to the third page and then worrying that you missed out on something in the first 2 issues, it's not something I'm used to, and it's just things like that where I'm like, am I going to enjoy if they keep adding new stuff from left field every time?
Right.
So, but I think that's kind of a Kirkman thing. So, but no, I mean, otherwise, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna run with this as long as it goes.
Cool.
I probably would watch the TV show because, as far as I know, it's somebody bought the rights and they're
Yeah,
going to do
I haven't
a
heard any
show.
more about that though. So who
Yeah,
knows?
I mean, issue 3, and I don't know how you keep, proclaiming, because I don't know how many issues Walking Dead was before they made the show on it. So,
70, 80 some.
all right. So it just seemed weird that
But
they
it
keep.
wasn't opted right away. Now, Thief of Thieves, another Kirkman book, was
Yeah.
opted almost immediately. First issue came out and it was opted for, because that was right after the Walking Dead TV show hit. It got opted for a television show. Have you enjoyed that TV show? Right,
Yeah.
because it doesn't exist. So
It
saying it's
exists.
opted for a TV show and us actually seeing it are two different things. So
Yeah.
what that
So-
does do is of course, if you are going to sell your books, the speculation
Yeah.
jacks the price up like crazy, and if you want to sell your books, now's the time to do it.
All right.
Well, they're still talking about it being a TV show as opposed to
Yeah.
it never being a TV show. So
Before the TV show tanks. Yeah. I could see that it would be just fine, but I think the market is pretty full out there with shows like this. I mean, it's a good comic, and we've talked about it with independent ideas. Sometimes there's a lot of cult books out there. So
yeah,
how does this one differ from the other?
Right.
I mean, right now, it's just good writing. So.
okay,
And
cool.
nice artwork too. I mean, the is it Azeta? So it's good. I can tell who each character is. They look the same each issue, so that's working out well for me.
Right on. Cool. I picked up a new one. I picked up issue 1 of this is the Sundowners. It's a Dark Horse book, issue 1, written by Tim Seeley, who does Revival, Hack and Slash. He's also writing. I want to say he's writing Grayson for DC, and he also is one of the 4 guys who are helping write script for Batman Eternal.
Okay.
So a wide breadth of stuff that he's got. This is a superhero book, which is kind of why I was interested in it. Dark Horse, one of their superhero books, and this one kind of had to do what I had seen of it before I decided I was going to get it. The little bit is that this group of superheroes are kind of like in group therapy, kind of like an AA meeting, except it's their they're superheroes potentially with issues, and they all get together just as a support group to try and help each other. So I thought, well, okay, that could be cool, or that could just be dumb as nails, and I wasn't sure exactly how they're going to treat it. Seeley generally writes serious stuff, so I didn't think it was going to be like a comedy, but I wasn't sure. It's actually pretty cool. It is serious. We get introduced to a character right off the very beginning who's some sort of a superhero who names herself Pigeon, and she has something bizarre going on. She's meeting some people. It has kind of an opening scene that's kind of strange, where she's giving up being this superhero. She's tossing the clothes aside, and she's met these people, and it's like she's being bathed, and I don't know if it's blood or it's just water that the way they've colored it makes it look that way. And she's got a whole bunch of weird scars or something growing on her back. Something's going on. Not sure what that is. That's the one part that's confusing about the book. It just kind of opens up with that, and you're kind of going, okay, what the hell's that? Then it flips over to, we meet this character who's kind of a slickster. He, kind of sees himself as a ladies' man, really arrogant, whatever. Meets this woman at a bar, orders drinks for both of them and whatnot. You find out it's his sister, but she's a psychologist. You find out he's a psychologist. There's something wrong with him. It's like he's had some traumatic thing go on in his life, and she's trying to help him work through that, humoring him by meeting him at a bar as opposed to meeting in actual therapy, because, it's my brother and I can't actually get him into therapy, so I'm going to try and do it myself kind of a thing.
All right.
And you find out that he's been hanging out in all of these self-help group type things. He's been hanging out at the equivalent of AA Anonymous, and all these different groups. And he's decided to run his own group because he's discovered that he's good at helping people, he thinks. So he's created this own group, and it's like it meets from like 10 o'clock to midnight, and it's superheroes. And he thinks he's discovered it's a new psychosis. These people who name themselves night names and run around doing crazy stuff. So we move on to a scene where basically he's at one of these groups, and you meet these three characters. One is like Citizen something or other. I can't remember their names right off hand, which shame on me. One is a go-go dancer who's kind of a dominatrix dressed type go-go dancer who goes by Crotilla. Yeah, and then there's this there's a woman who I can't remember the name of what her character's name is, but she seems to get her power. She has like a magical tattoo on her back.
Right.
And it's kind of a curse and a blessing. She has to do a certain amount of sin, and that builds up a battery of superpowers, so then she can turn around and then use it for good. So she does bad stuff to turn around and do so good. So she steals all the time. So she's basically a thief. She's constantly robbing people of stuff to get her superpowers. And this guy is like, you don't really know a lot about him. He seems to be like he's like maybe an ex-boxer or something like that. He basically just patrols the streets. He's wearing body armor, and helps out the hood basically. And then you get this old guy who has suffered a stroke, so half the time you can't understand what he's saying because half his body is limp and he doesn't have much control over it and stuff.
Yeah.
Each one of them kind of tells the last night's experience, and each one of them tells a story about something goes weird for them. And of course this guy that's supposed to be helping him, he's just kind of writing down how crazy they all are, and they all leave their meeting to go about their business, and the older gentleman who had suffered the stroke, he gets attacked by somebody, and they all kind of rush to his rescue, and they all basically get their clocks cleaned, and when they wake up, the Crotilla lady literally has a big crow head for a head as opposed to having a human head.
All right.
And this guy's lost his mask, and it kind of leaves everything kind of open-ended as to what's going on. Probably not describing it really well here, but I really enjoyed it. The artwork has lots of great facial expressions and whatnot. If you're familiar with Ryan Kelly, who did Saucer County, he did 3. He does lots of independent type work. It's kind of his art's kind of like that. But I really enjoyed it. It's an interesting idea. These people trying to group together to kind of come to terms with whatever their issues might be, and this greater mystery of what's messing with them.
Yeah. I do like how the guy on the cover, his symbol appears to be like the men's room symbol.
Yeah, and that's really it, because he's like Joe Citizen. His name is like.
All right.
I can't remember what it's. Well, I'm looking to see what his name was called, but he's simply just the Concerned Citizen.
Okay.
That's his name. He goes by the Concerned Citizen. I mean, so you kind of get the impression these guys, they actually are helpful, but at the same time, they're kind of a joke too. It's kind of like, why would you really do this? Well, like now, if me and you decide to go dress up as superheroes and actually try to fight crime, there's part of us that go, yeah, that's cool, and there's part of us that goes, why in the hell would you do that? Right? And they don't really seem to have superpowers, except for the one woman believes. I mean, the psychologist who's running this group, he's writing them down as all having psychoses. That none of them have powers at all. They're all just crazy, and they think they can do these things. They're just all hallucinating in one sense or another. But because like supposedly each one of them that has these powers, they go out to attempt to do something and it fails, which is one of the reasons why he's writing down that they're all crazy. And I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure whether or not, at this point, whether or not these people have powers and somebody's done something to them to make their powers not work right, or they really are like me and you, except they're crazy and they think they've got superpowers.
All right.
And they dress up and go out and try and help people and whatnot. Because there at the end, some crazy stuff happens, and you're kind of like, okay, now what? Because, I mean, this seems pretty legitimate that some real stuff's happening, so I don't know. it was cool. It was a cool first issue. I was excited by it, so I'm looking forward to getting more of it.
I picked up Drumheller,
Oh yeah.
and it continues to be the drug riot excitement that it has been previously. In this one, it starts to ask the question, who is Drumheller and who is his little ghost friend?
Hmm.
And they are still investigating these little murder children. And there's a detective that turns into like the spirit of the hunt, and he's telling them, you don't want to know who you are, and you don't want to mess with the children. Just keep going along on your little adventures, and just don't do this. So, so it continues just to be an interesting story. Like I continue to say, the guy even mentions it. He goes, go back to South Dakota. Because you do your little bunking community and just do your drugs. If it wasn't for South Dakota, I don't know that I would even have collected it or read it. Or it continues to just be a weird flow to it. But I guess maybe that's what continues to make me grow as a reader, is to challenge myself with a couple things I wouldn't normally do.
Sure.
And then there is a preview for the Super Animated Man.
All right, on.
And so that's at the back of that, and the preview is Olo. Oh no, it's the rhino. Evidently ate some meat that he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
And they're telling him that he has to pay him back. So
yeah.
It's like a 4-page spread. So it's very interesting. It's to see the artwork, to see a taste of it. So, and you've described it to me, and it was nice that they added that in there. So
yeah, give you a look at what it might be like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that does it for me. So I can't wait to hear about the rest of yours.
Black Science, still incredibly awesome if you're into your heavy sci-fi. That's just an absolute trip. The art in it continues to be incredibly bonkers, and they continue to come up with strange animals and alien life forms that they run into. I mean, here's like, I don't know, they're like polar bear snails. As our characters are cascading off this cliff, they're flying through all the trees and stuff down the side of this cliff. The kids get loose from the rest of the group. They end up saving themselves. I think what I think is really great about this is we continue to learn about Grant, who's the main character in the book to start out with, who created the pillar that's got them jumping around all these places. But spoilers, kind of. He's dead, or seems to be dead. I mean, to the best of our knowledge, he's dead. But we're still learning lots about him through everybody else. I think it's really interesting that we're still learning what this man was like, because while they're falling down and they're kind of tussling with these bear snails, you're kind of getting a description of Dad through one of the kids, describing how Dad helped him and the kind of character building stuff that happened amongst them and what Dad is like and all that stuff, which I thought was really interesting in this. We get some other admissions of guilt in this from some people as to stuff they did. There's a Native American shaman that they scooped up a few issues ago in this one world that they've taken with them to a couple others. We get to learn his history. He's actually familiar with Black Science. He's the first person to actually, I think, say Black Science in the book. And he refers to the column as being Black Science. His Native American people had an equivalent to this column that lets them teleport around dimensions, except they had an onboard computer that helped them, so they jumped to the right places and didn't get messed up, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But he kind of points out that the whole column is a really bad thing. He actually knows English. They've known English this entire time, and he just hasn't said anything. He's always been talking in some Native American language.
Yeah.
He just hasn't said anything because he kind of has been watching them to see if would finally figure out that this column is nothing but bad news. And that's kind of what some of them have decided. You know what? This thing's just bad news. Us jumping around all over the place and messing with dimensions and timelines and stuff like that has been nothing but heartache. We need to stop doing it, kind of thing. And some of them are like, no, we need to go jump around and see if we can fix stuff. just lots of great stuff in it. But like I said, the art in it is, and the storytelling is just amazing. This is the title page. You know, she's two big, long, glorious panels of this alien environment that's just absolutely gorgeous.
What issue is that?
This is issue 8.
Right.
So it's like a trade. You know, there's the trade. The first trade is out, and this is a couple issues past the first trade.
All right.
But Scalera's art is awesome. I think that Dean White's, you know, painted art that he calls it, the painted coloring that he does, just makes the book pop visually. Every page, everything that's going on in it is just amazing. So now we got 2 stories going on. We got the adults all in one place trying to figure out their crap. The secretary that's in the group, she may be doing something devious beyond what everybody else is doing that's been devious. And then you've got the 2 kids who've been separated from the group trying to figure out how to find the column because they know they've got 72 hours before it jumps again, and they don't want to be left behind. So,
all right.
so that'll be that's cool. It's been curious. Another Rick Remender book. I actually right now I think I like better than Black Science, and I think Black Science is an amazing book. This is issue 2 of Low, and this book is just amazing. I absolutely love the art in it. The art in it is it's just rich. It's these tones. The whole thing's underwater, so it has a green hue to it lots of times, and then glowing lights of you know, orange and reds and whatnot. The writing in it is absolutely beautiful. There's parts of it that I would consider darn close to being poetry in the way it's written. The story takes a 10-year jump from issue number 1. Last month, I was on here on the round table. James Crowder was on with me, and we were comparing this where it felt like that this was a lot like Black Science because we read them all in the same week. They're both kind of felt like family books and family in crisis book. This goes way beyond that now. 10 years have gone by. You know, the family's gone. It's the wife. She's left. She's trying to maintain this whole optimistic look at the world. The daughters were kidnapped and are gone. Who knows? She thinks they should figure out how to find a new sub and go after them. The husband died on the sub. He bled out on the sub. Somehow she got rescued. We don't know exactly how that happened. It's 10 years later. The son that was left behind, obviously this whole traumatic death of his father and the his 2 sisters has fundamentally changed him. He's a cop, and not a very pleasant one. He, you know, is freely partaking of prostitutes and drugs and all kinds of stuff. His mom is calling him on the phone all the time, pestering him to come visit her because she's basically still held up in their little house looking at photographs of her dead family 10 years later still, dreaming of getting them back. And he's like, Mom, I can't deal with you. I can't deal with this whole, it's been 10 years, let's sit down to dinner and remember the good old days. I can't do that. You know, we've got probably another 5 years at best, and all the oxygen is going to be used up down here under the ocean, and we're all going to die a miserable death because we're going to be breathing soup. And so who cares? You know, quit being Mrs. Optimist. It's just ridiculous. I can't handle it. Towards the end of this, the first issue, she had sent out all these probes. She was this optimist. They're going to find a new planet with that they could live on and all this great stuff. Well, this issue kind of ends with one of those probes finally beeping back 10 years later saying that it's found some great place.
Right.
He has gotten into a fight with a pimp, executed the prostitute that he was using for free by accident, has taken the pimp to this place to basically make him admit to having, basically that he's responsible for killing the prostitute and not the cop, because he doesn't want that on his conscience. And then I think the space pirates that stole the kids at the end show up towards the end of it. But it's just, it's...
They also took the mech suit, didn't they?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. And that was one of the big things that was keeping this city alive, was this powerful mech suit that would go out and hunt and gather supplies and all that stuff. And so the place is just, in the last 10 years, has gotten even more desperate because it's missing that key component of one of the things that was keeping them around. The story is told in a very different fashion. Remender at the end of it, if you read the letters page, he talks about how he's taking a different approach to this. There isn't the same kind of action that there is in lots of comics, because making sure there's lots of action in comics is kind of a safe way to make sure you're holding your readers in place. As long as there's something quote unquote exciting happening, we stick around longer.
Yeah.
And he wants a slower paced comic that, no, not slower paced, but doesn't have those immediate action fixes. I mean, there is some in here, obviously, because somebody gets shot and whatnot. But there's still lots of really interesting and depthy story in it, and that's the approach he's planning on taking with this one. Whereas Black Science, the other one he's writing that comes out the same week, this book is just crazy pants. It's just nonstop. They're just constantly running. I think there's like 6 panels where they're holding still. Otherwise, they're running from whatever the next crazy thing is and trying to get to the column and trying to get the hell out of here, and then they jump to the next place and it's another crazy alien planet that they're running like crazy. It's just kind of nonstop, action.
Yeah.
And this one's not. This one's just lots of very thoughtful, contemplative stuff in it. But I love the art. The art by Tocchini, I guess is how you say the person's name. I know I'm butchering it because I don't know. It looks Italian or French. But
yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's cool. If you're offended by sex, don't get it though.
Oh, low. Yeah, that's what I kind of heard on that one.
Yeah. Because there's one point in there where he's, like I said, he's using this prostitute, and I mean, it doesn't show genitalia, but it leaves nothing to the imagination either. As he's snorting these drugs and picturing himself as a Roman gladiator. That's why the cover looks the way it does.
Okay.
That's what
that does make some sense. Then, all right.
Yeah. So, but I absolutely loved it. It's a rich comic in a lot of ways.
All right.
Great stuff. The Massive. I did read this. This is issue 26. There's 4 issues left. This is the last story arc. This is the part 2 of 6 of this last story arc. We find out some pretty mind-bending things about the character Mary. Every once in a while, they've kind of hinted that she's something else. I just always kind of thought that she was just kind of this amazing person that somehow has the faculties to kind of get herself through stuff. It's implied in here that she's been around for forever, that she's actually like a piece of the world, like she's an entity of Gaia, of the planet Earth. She's the part that roams the Earth, kind of trying to keep things in check. And of course, she's had a child, and she's given this child to Callum, the other main character in the book, for him to take care of, and also kind of explains that she's this thing in some sense. And another crash is happening. The Earth has shifted just very slightly. So now all the satellites that are up there that have been flying around, we have all, of course, we have all these satellites flying around us. They're all based on, very finely tuned mathematical equations about the gravitational pull that keeps them all in place, right? So if the Earth moves even a few centimeters one direction, it screws that all to hell. And so literally, there's this giant, crazy storm, and who knows if anybody's going to live through it. All the satellites. And there's thousands and thousands of them up there, right? They're all raining down on the Earth right now. Just all of them just plummeting down, clearing the heavens. Just purging the heavens of all this crap that shouldn't be there, as far as I'm assuming the planet's concerned. So really interesting. Now I'm just incredibly fascinated because now it's taken this completely other turn with this kind of, like I said, every once in a while it kind of hinted at there might be some sort of a supernatural something. But it's always seemed very grounded as a whole. And then to have this kind of hint just towards the end of the book just kind of makes you go, what the heck's going on? So I'm really curious now to see what happens. And the final page seems to have our ship, the Capitol, this little ship they've been going on all the time. And of course, the premise of this book is the Capitol's hunting for their home base ship, which is this giant converted whaling ship called the Massive.
All right.
At the very end of this issue, it looks like they're about ready to run into the Massive. It's suddenly shown up again after years of hunting for the thing, and it just always being out of reach. Suddenly it's there. So, curious to see how it ends. Really intriguing.
So do you think they're? Sorry, do you know or think they're wrapping it up then? Is
Yeah,
this
30
series
issues.
30
Issue
issues?
30 is the final issue. It's always been set at going to be a 30 issue run. So
Okay, all right.
yeah, so this will end it in some sense. Curious to see how it ends and what kind of a statement. I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that Brian Wood writes lots of stuff that has a political bend to it in one direction or other. Lots of times he'll try to play both sides of the fence, not always successfully, but so yeah, I'm curious to see when this ends if it will really be you know a a comment on climate change and all that might encompass whatever your beliefs are on climate change and stuff. Whether this is just a story that happens to that plays a role in it, or if he's actually trying to make some greater statement. Well, I guess we'll be left up to interpretation when the whole thing's said and done. But I've been enjoying it. Yeah. Letter 44. This is issue 9. The alien spacecraft that they've named the Chandelier actually goes active in this issue and does something. And it puts everybody in panic mode because it blows a moon of Jupiter up.
Oh,
I mean, because the question has always been, what is this alien thing that's kind of hiding out in the asteroid belt? Is it a dangerous thing? Is it mining? Is it just an antenna? What's it really all about? And it nukes a planet of Jupiter. I mean, just zap, and it's gone. And the scientists on Earth are freaking out about it. Of course, the people who are in the ship right next to it are freaking out about it. The discussion with the scientists on Earth is that they think they figured out about how much energy it would take to blow up this moon, and I can't remember what it is. It's a scientific term of x 9 times x bajillion something or others. And the president's like, okay, so if we took every nuclear weapon in the entire world and blew them up all at once, where does that rate at? And the scientist is like, well, that's a mere 6 whatever. And so he's like, okay, so this thing that's sitting out there has 3 times more power than if we launched everything all at once. We're screwed. Does anybody else see the problem here? Yeah. And of course, the scientist is like, oh, don't worry, we've got weapons that are far more special than conventional nuclear warheads, because they've been developing these lasers and stuff, and supposedly some of those weapons
weren't supposed to.
Right. Well, some of these weapons are supposedly on the spaceship next to this alien craft, but we don't know. It's intriguing. I still like the comic. I think the art's unfortunate. Continue to not be my favorite as far as the art goes, but the story itself is interesting enough, and there's all this political machine that's going on. The last president is kind of trying to pull the strings and try to run the show, even though he's not the president anymore. He has gone to some other world leaders and kind of said, hey, look, I'll give you all of this schematics for all this Uber technology that America has suddenly come up with if you give me enough funding to take control back over of this stuff and whatnot. So there's potentially a coup going on. The ex-president is potentially rob the current president of all of his power, potentially, is what's going on. So that's to me, that's interesting as much as the whole alien part is.
Well, I've been listening to you talk about 44 over the other episodes that you do, and it does sound like it is a really great story. It's unfortunate the art is not up to what you want.
Yeah, it's I think 9 issues in, I'm acclimatized to it to some degree, so at least this issue didn't have any glaringly misshapen faces that I just kind of went, oh, okay, this is bad. But yeah, so I don't know if that's just the artist getting more and more practice on the same characters or what, but yeah, that to me that's the downside of the book, is it doesn't have a stronger artist on it. But enjoying it. And the last book I got was The Sixth Gun.
Oh, yeah.
This is issue 42, which means there's 8 issues left, and this is done. This run is done, going to 50. Um, and I love the book. All I'm going to say about it is everything that is built up throughout the entire run of the book is about ready to massively hit the fan in this thing. I don't want to say more about it because I really encourage people to go and pick up the trades, get the trades. Because if I say anything about this issue, it spoils the 6 trades that are before this.
And if there's anybody new to your show, I would definitely say I've listened to you talk about it throughout the episodes you've done, and I picked up 3, and I regret that I didn't pick up the rest because it was an awesome run. So.
Yeah, it's just really cool, and this issue just is cementing the final stuff in place. I mean, I don't know how it's ultimately how it's all going to end. I mean, it can go a number of different directions, but this issue really does start to lock stuff into place as to you can kind of go, oh man, it's all gonna come apart at the seams and explode, and who knows what's gonna come out the other end of it. And if you're out there and you're looking for a book with a strong female character in it, Becky probably has to be one of the strongest female characters in a comic book. You start out with her being this kind of a confused farm girl, and you get to see her through all these issues develop into she's a pretty big badass herself. I mean, she definitely I think at this point gives Drake Sinclair a run for his money on making cold, hard, calculated decisions that you would be surprised that she makes, and she's a really cool character. If you're one of those people that's looking for good representation of females in comic books, I think she's definitely one. I mean, she basically in this issue calls it how it really is, and points out some of the fallacies in Drake's mindset of how he thinks things are going to work and whatnot. She actually has information that he doesn't have, and kind of goes, no, this is really what needs to happen. So it's going to be cool. I'm going to be sad when it's done in 8 months, but happy to have read it.
And I always feel the same way too when you get an end of a series. I'm always happy that it rounded out. It gave you a satisfying ending. That somebody else didn't try and pick it up, or the writer didn't just let it disappear as he crapped it away or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the great things. To have a nice collection of books. My lock and key is what I think about every time.
Right.
And it's a beginning, a middle, and end. It's a beautiful set that I can go to every time and read for hours on end and enjoy. And I could see that with Sixth Gun because I picked up the 3 trades, like I said. And as I finish it out, I'm definitely going to enjoy it that way too.
And that's a beauty of a lot of these independent books too. Because it's all creator controlled. Yeah. I mean, not to say that there are editors there to help them make sure they put out a decent product, but the editors aren't telling them how the product has to be, how it has to be. Like the big 2, like with corporate, franchise characters. Obviously, you've only got so much latitude, and that's one of the beauties of independent books is that as long as they're producing a good product, they get to write the book for as long as they want to. I'm assuming that most of these creators sit down and go, and to some degree do go, okay, I know this is the story I want to tell, and this is kind of how it needs to end. They have to have that in mind, so hopefully they can at least give us as readers a satisfying piece of entertainment, and then they figure out how to make that work for whatever they want to. And so if the creator's in a place where they're lucky enough to get a 30-issue run or a 60-issue run or whatever, 50-issue run, where they know that up front that they're going to be able to probably do that, I think you can create some really great stuff and have some potential to tell an awesome story that really does end in his end. Some of these good writers are creating these books, and like in the case of Saga, where they knew they were going to go 12 issues. They knew that for sure. They were going to go 12 issues, and that could have been the end of it. But they also knew how to write more if they wanted to write more. And how they still have an ending. I mean, they have an ending for this whole thing, but now they can tell all the stories in between that they want to tell, as opposed to just quickly getting to that ending. Lazarus is another book. That's why I know that Greg Rucka has said they had it mapped out where they could tell a short version if they needed to, but they knew they now know that the sales popularity says that they're planning more like a 70-issue run, which they can. If the sales were to suddenly start dropping off and they start getting the signs that it's time to wrap it up because people aren't interested anymore, they know how to truncate it down, without getting to not get too many plot lines going at once that they can't then turn around and shrink it down and still give us that satisfying ending, which of course you're never going to get in a Batman book. You might get a somewhat ending to a storyline, but you're not going to get an ending, where they actually walk off into the sunset or die at the end or whatever the case may be out of those corporate comics. And that is one of the plus sides to independent books. For sure.
Well, and I definitely would like to thank you once again, because I don't know that I would read as many independent books if it wasn't for your show.
Well, appreciate it. I'm glad you're checking it out. I think everybody, if you love comic books, and it's not just solely about superheroes, and quite frankly, even if it is about superheroes, they're few and far between, but there are other superhero books out there besides Marvel and DC. And I'm not knocking Marvel or DC whatsoever. I love my superhero books, and I read lots of superhero books. This just happened to be this weird week that it lines up that I don't have any of those, and this is the week I get all of the most of my independent stuff comes out. But if you love comic books, there's just so much different stuff out there. Or if you think you might like comic books, just about every kind of genre out there right now, especially right now. If you like science fiction, it's a great time, because it seems like Image is cranking out a lot of science fiction that they're calling science fiction anyway, books, and more are coming. So get out there and try some of that stuff if you're interested in some of those other types of books. I mean, there's, Six Gun is a Western. Yeah, it has some supernatural stuff thrown into it, but it is a Western. They are riding horses and shooting six-shooters and talking with those kinds of accents that you would assume are part of the whole Western genre. So, I mean, there are mysteries. It's all out there. It's just a matter of looking around or listening, or hopefully you're someplace where you have a decent comic book shop and you can walk in and go, this is the genre I want to read. I don't want to read Spider-Man. I don't want to read Batman. I'm interested in modern fairy tales, and somebody can direct you to,
Xenoscopes?
Well, oh God, I hope not. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not my cup of tea. For some people they enjoy that, obviously, because Xenoscope has a business, so there's a market for it. Or or Fairest, or Fables, or
Fables.
Stuff where they're telling a modern fairy tale type thing, or Pretty Deadly, or there's lots of that type of thing if that's what you're into. Or if you're into science fiction, there's Black Science, there's Low, there's a new book coming out, something Roach, I can't remember the name of it now. That these are just different. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what the name of it is, but just different. There's all these different genres are out there. The only thing I don't think it's out there right now is truly a romance book that I'm aware of. That's more that kind of a thing.
Except for that Punisher versus Elektra.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. There are books that flirt with it to some degree. I think there are parts of another Rick Remender book, Deadly Class. There's some of that in there because that book feels kind of like the 1980s Brat Pack kind of type stories. I mean, it's more vicious, obviously, because it's a school of assassins. But there's some love tension in there and some messed up relationships, that kind of thing. If you're into that kind of a storyline. That book has that. But I think that your straight up kind of romance book, I don't think is out there.
No, I think
unless one of those Archie books is that way, and I don't know later.
I think Comics even mentioned that in his last video where he was talking about genres.
Yeah.
That we are kind of still lacking in just the true romance. So.
Which kind of surprises me in some way with some of the novels that are out there that are really popular right now, or have been really popular, and with digital comics being what they are. I know that as far as regular books and stories, I know that since digital has become so prolific, that romance novels and adult novels and erotica and stuff like that, the sales of that stuff has gone up a lot because it's really easy, to sit there with your phone or your tablet and read something that could have a cover or a title on it that's somewhat scandalous.
Yeah.
You can read it on and no one knows. I mean, you could tell them, what are you reading? Oh, I'm reading the Sunday Times, where you could be reading, 50 Shades of Grey or whatever, and no one's going to know. With this advent of digital, with digital comics being what they are, I would think it'd be a lot easier to sell that type of stuff if people were embarrassed about it, because you could read it reasonably, unless someone's looking over your shoulder, and no one's going to know because you're just staring at your tablet or whatever. So I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't. There isn't more of it. I mean, I know it's out there some, but I'm surprised that we don't have an Image book or a Vertigo book or a somebody that's going to take a risk on a more of a romance or a romantic comedy or whatever type book. Because I'm sure there are people that buy it.
Yeah.
I'd give it a shot just out of curiosity. So. At any rate, anything else we want to talk about?
I can't think news-wise or anything else like that. No, I think.
Good week of comics for me. Obviously, shaky in one case for you.
One just pissed me off, but the others made up for it. So
left a serious bad taste in your mouth. But
anyway,
that's cool that you're on Cal. I hope you can find issue 3 to fill in that little bit for you. And
oh, I know I will. So.
Cool. So, thanks for coming on and talking books with me.
All right. Thanks for the invite. I always enjoyed it.
Yep. Hopefully we'll be back next week. We'll talk some more comics. I'm sure next week I'll have superhero comics, and we can talk Big 2 more or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I only got 4 comments. I don't know if that's just because nobody's talking tonight or my stupid feed isn't working very good. But thanks you guys for tuning in. Thanks, John, for showing up, and Carlos, and I'm a Dragon Zord. Thanks for being here. And you other 6 or 7 viewers who hung out here live with us, I appreciate it. Anybody who watches it after the fact, thanks for watching the show, and hopefully we'll catch you next week. Have a good night, everybody.